Hey guys, welcome to today's edition of the Richard Cuff Morning Report. If you are just joining me, I want to take this time to introduce myself. I'm Richard Cuff, president of CTI Marketing, founder of Nasimba Business Alliance, and master greatness coach here at GetReadyForGreatness.com. And I am I'm setting up this. Give me a moment as I get set up here. I am really excited about what is going on um, um, with our morning report. Hold on one second. Let me move this out. My lighting is sort of in the way here. There we go. I just wanted to get that taken care of. This is fun. This is me having fun, guys. This is I don't even know how to explain this phase in my life right now. This is just a great place to be in. I've spent the past 40 years getting here, and I've always known that I would have this kind of reality in life. I just didn't understand the process and I most certainly did not understand that what I knew at 22 years old would take 40 years to manifest because that's just the way it works. I can't say anything more than that. Um, there are times that we are getting spiritual energy pouring into our lives, and it inspires us to do things. And sometimes that spiritual energy can pour into your life in a way of saying to you, look up. And you look up, and at the very moment you look up, there's a car heading toward you that allows you to swerve. And if that spiritual energy hadn't come into your life at that moment, you would not have seen that car in that moment, and you would not have been able to avoid the calamity in that moment. But the reality of it is that moment of time could be a split second, but it also could be an eternity. And that's the way it works. So the biggest mistake that can be made is that you think in that moment that that's how it works, only in that moment. Um, but that's that. I won't go into too much detail on that because that's me getting into um, my coaching and mindset development, and really that's not what the morning report is about. It's literally about me reporting the news, and I do want to say to you guys, bear with me because there's a song that we used to sing as kids in church. Please be patient with me. God is not through with me yet. So even at 61 years old, I can say to you, please be patient with me. God is not through with me yet. So my studio is not completely set up here. I still have things that I have to put into place to get the podcast studio together and also coordinate it in such a way that I can begin to bring on guests and play videos and do all the things that we need to do as I bring to you the news, my report on the news and the world around me. So if you guys have not had a chance to join me before, um, and, and 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 also if you've not had an opportunity to check out anything that I've done over the years, and I'm new to you, just let me take this moment and introduce myself. I'm Richard Cuff. I'm president of CTI Marketing, founder of Nasimba Business Alliance, CEO of Concentel Mobile, and master greatness coach at GetReadyForGreatness.com. And most of the energy, if you will, that I put into this type of a format, reaching out to you through social media and any of the broadcasts that I do, is all going to direct back to our Get Ready for Greatness platform. So on YouTube, just search "Get Ready for Greatness" and you'll find that that's where this video is. And in fact, I'm broadcasting live onto my YouTube channel, and then I just shared it over here to you. If you're watching on Facebook, that's cool as well. Unfortunately, I can't, and I probably could also share it over to LinkedIn, but I'm just not right now. I'll do that a little bit later on. But let's get into the news and to the stuff, the news you can use. Because what I want to do is this. I think over the next 4 years, and especially the next 2 years, there's a window of opportunity for us to right this ship, to get it going in the right direction. It almost went over the edge, and it's still dangling, if you will, with the wheels in reverse, trying to get off the cliff over which we almost plunged. So if we can we've hit reverse, and now we're spinning the wheels, reversing. But I want to bring to you some of the things to look out for as the energy now is beginning to pour into this world, and the battleground is no longer over continents, and it's no longer over who controls the world. We've had those battles. We've had 2,000 years to fight over who controls the physical body of somebody else, who controls the mind, who controls the emotions, who controls the continents, who controls the gold, and all of those things. And we are a global society now. So where else can we go to control? There's nowhere else to go other than controlling the ultimate real estate in our universe, and that's one's mind. And so that's where the battle is right now. The battle is over who controls the mind of a group of people. And a mindless people are easy to control. And I say mindless in the sense that people who are not even conscious that they have a consciousness. They think consciousness is your actions. So if they can find justification in their actions, they're going to act the way that they're going to act. That's all you're going to get. Whatever it is that they're thinking, feeling, based on their beliefs, they're going to act on it. If they feel like it's time to burn it down, that's all they're going to say. So that's the lowest level of person. But the highest level, the highest vibratory level, and I'm talking about vibrations here and consciousness, is that not only are you conscious, but you're also aware, and you're consciously aware of your limitations. And again, you can see it, right? You can see people who may be conscious because they're different than those who are unconscious. So the ones who are conscious, the only difference is one person can step on your foot and be unconscious of the fact that he just stepped on your foot and still not apologize because he doesn't have a consciousness and a conscience to feel like he was wrong. His attitude is, well, your feet were just in the way. You should move your feet. That's what you should do. Get your feet out the way, and you'll be able to um, uh, be better. Your life will be better if you just get your feet out of the way of my feet. But that's that unconscious person. The conscious person knows that he's stepping on your foot, and he did it for a specific reason, to cause you pain. But he's still just conscious. He's not aware. He's not aware that his stepping on your foot is causing you a certain type of pain, maybe a pain that resonates because your dad had his foot stepped on, your granddad and great grandfather, and so on. It doesn't matter to him. All he knows is that stepping on your foot causes you pain, and he doesn't have a consciousness beyond that. But then there are those that are consciously aware. That's, I think, what we're dealing with. We got those who know how to create pain, and they're consciously aware that it goes all the way back thousands of years and can impact another 1,000 years, but they still don't care. And then there are those who are consciously aware of the limitations. And that's when you begin to get pushback. That's when we begin to see that those who are consciously aware of limitations are the ones who put barriers and fences around. And you look at the Black Lives Matter protest in Washington, D.C. 6 months ago, and compared to the Trump MAGA protests, and look at what the preparation was. Look at the arrest. It's an easy out to say that it was strictly because of racism. Yes, you can do that. That's the easy route. That's the low level, that's the low hanging fruit of the issue. But there's a bigger issue that if you begin to peel back the layers and look at it, it's the fact that when an individual rises to consciousness, awareness, and then limitations, not only do they become aware of your limitations, they also become aware of their limitations. And that's where we begin to have rulers and powers that be that start manipulating the laws of that we all are impacted by. So the law of limitation says that the limit of a lesser force is always determined by the greater force. So the force that's coming at you is always a lesser force than you. Doesn't matter who they are. That's why you can stand in defiance against the government. What's the worst thing they can do? My aunt said it perfectly to a bunch of cops that arrested her back in the early 50s. She was thrown in jail, and her sisters, my mom, and the rest. And I think my mom would have been too young to go. She was the baby sister, but she was told the story. That her oldest sister, my aunt Susie, was mad as hell in that jail, and the younger sisters were all there trying to get Aunt Susie to calm down. Aunt Susie wasn't having it. They said, Susie, if you don't calm down, they'll pull you out of this jail in the middle of the night and kill you. And Aunt Susie yelled it loud enough for everybody, probably in the whole county, to hear it. Kill me, damn it! You can't eat me. that's that's some real defiance right there. But defiance on that level turns into it can be martyrdom, it can be patriotism, it can be a whole bunch of things. But when you are limited to your ability in a society and you recognize your limitations against your ability to change those things, then it's a totally different issue. But as it relates to the power inside of you, that's the greatest force of all. So that conscious awareness of those limitations was is really what's most important. But there's a step above that, and that's the law of attraction. That once you become conscious, once you become aware, and once you become consciously aware of your limitations, then you can also become consciously aware of your ability to attract a successful outcome. Now, here's what you have to understand, that the successful outcome, especially if you are going against someone else who also believes that they too can have a successful outcome, it creates this war. Whose reality becomes the reality? And so we go to war on that level. I believe I won. You believe you won. Well, let's count up the votes. Let's look at the replay and see who crossed the finish line first. And if none of those physical things are going to tell us what it is, then we have to move up to another level to determine it. And that's a mental level. So now we can begin to think, well, look, we both can't be winners, we both can't be losers, but how about we find a way to compromise, work this thing out? Well, that's what the Democrats did with the Republicans back in 1877, when a contested election that the Republicans knew the Democrats had won because they suppressed the black vote. And there's no way that they could win the popular vote and the electoral vote. No way, not with all those blacks down there voting. So they knew that they were using intimidation or just outright not counting those votes. So in 1877, the Democrat, Samuel James Tilden, won the election, 1876. He was supposed to be president, but the Republican Party contested and was ready to go to the Supreme Court. And then the Democrats would have to bring proof. Well, they knew. They didn't even go through a recount. They didn't count the votes. They didn't even show the votes that said Rutherford B. Hayes had won all the votes in the South. All the votes? Really? And so he got the popular vote and the electoral vote, and the Republicans said, no, nah, 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 nah. That didn't happen. We'll go to the Supreme Court. Well, you got to remember the Democrats were batting zero against the Supreme Court because in the 12 years before 1876, from 1865 all the way on, look at what happened. There was there was this little thing called the Civil War, right? So we start there. And then there was this thing called the Emancipation Proclamation. There was the canceling of all of the currency that the South was using, so their money was made no good. There was um, the the granting of a constitutional amendment that would ensure that there would be no more enslaved people ever, right? 13th Amendment. Then the 14th Amendment guaranteed that those formerly enslaved people would get the same federal protection that the states get, literally. That's what the 14th Amendment was about. It was about giving formerly enslaved Africans, because they weren't, at this particular time, they weren't considered Americans. So they were formerly enslaved Africans who just happened to still be here. And so these politicians were saying, well, look, if they're just formerly enslaved Africans, we need to send them back. Doesn't matter how they got here. Is what matters is they are undocumented immigrants. Who was it? Ben Fraser. Ben Fraser. Sorry, Ben. That's the only the Ben that comes to mind. My good friend Ben Fraser here in Jackson. If you guys haven't had a chance, look up Ben Fraser, Northside Coalition. You'll see why I brought his name up. In fact, I want to get Ben on the show. But Ben Carson, that's the Ben that I want. Uncle Ben. I wanted to bring Uncle Ben up because Ben Carson, and he's been really silent. And by the way, has anybody heard from Ben Carson? We need to do a wellness check. All right. So I want y'all to do a wellness check on Ben Carson, find out where he is. But Ben Carson said we were immigrants. The Africans came here, something like that. He said Africans came here as immigrants. Immigrants, really? But the point is, when the 13th Amendment ensured that there should no longer be slavery or involuntary servitude except as punishment for a crime. And I'm going to do an entire show. It will take an entire show to do something on that, the exception to the rule and how it got there, because that was placed there in order to appease the South. Because remember, the 13th Amendment was written in the most contested period in this nation, right after the Civil War. Now we've got to figure out how to, like they're trying to do right now, how do we get peace again? How do we bring this nation together? For whatever reason, the big challenge is always, how do we bring the two parts of the whiteness of the United States together, because it broke apart. So we got to put whiteness back together again. That's really what they were doing. But as a part of that, they also had Reconstruction going on, which meant that the part of whiteness who wanted to break this thing off anyway, who went to war, who stormed, if they could have made it all the way up to the Capitol, they would have stormed it. Even during the Civil War, the South never made it to the Capitol. They never did. They never placed a flag there. They never fought a battle that far north. All the battles were fought in the South. So the reality of it is they were never able to walk the halls of Congress with a Confederate flag until January 6th. In fact, you guys got to remember that 1621 it replaces 9/11. So that whole Confederacy dynamic was going on because the South had lost, and the federal government had its foot on the back of the necks of those in the South who would try to rise again and say, not today, not today. So they weren't going to rise. So now that dynamic, what do you have? You got the left and the right, the far extreme left, and the far extreme right. And during that period that the far extreme left and the far extreme right couldn't get their act together, you go and look in your history books. Don't read the ones that Trump is trying to write and Texas is writing. Read the history books that talk about what happened during Reconstruction. The 13th Amendment that ensured all enslaved people would never face slavery again, except as punishment for a crime. The 14th Amendment that Republicans or Democrats of the South were trying, their legislators were coming and trying to say, hey, look, what do we do about these undocumented immigrants called Africans that are here? They can't read, they can't write, they can't contribute to the society. So why don't we just send them all back to Africa? And they had to write the 14th Amendment to say that even though they are not citizens and we're not going to treat them as people, because there's never been any document written that says Africans in this country that were brought here as undocumented immigrants. Mm-hmm. There's never been a document that says we are truly human being citizens equal to white Americans. There's nothing that says that. You can't find anything in the Constitution. In fact, Plessy v. Ferguson made it clear that the Supreme Court was saying, don't think, my brother, just because you are no longer enslaved, that makes you equal to the white man. There's nothing that can make you equal to the white man, not even this Supreme Court. So take your behind on to the back of the bus and you'll get separate but equal as it relates to the government, but you're going to be separated from white folk. And that we want to make clear. Well, that's how the courts and the systems of the United States were treating Africans. So they had to write a constitutional amendment to make certain that no state would ever create a law that says, if a Black person is found in our state, we're going to ship your behind back to Africa, because they could have done that. That was possible until the 14th Amendment said you get equal protection under the law. Which law? The constitutional law, not the local law. Obviously, the police department and George Floyd and all of those things prove that we do not get equal protection under state law and under private law and under the whatever law it is that makes them not want to shoot 1,000 insurrectionists that are taking the Capitol, but want to stand around a bunch of peaceful protesters who are protesting social and racial injustice and in those things. Whatever it is that makes them want to do that, that mindset is that you'll never be equal to us. So the 14th Amendment said your person, your personal property, everything including, includes your body. There's no greater personal property that you can protect than your physical body. So that can't be violated without due process. So that also meant technically the product of your property, the baby that comes out of your body, then doesn't have to go through this process. When it's born a citizen. And that's another thing that happens. I don't want to get too far into this because I just want this to be about, focusing in on laying the foundation for what I'll be talking about on a daily basis here on the Morning Report. But you got to get how that works, guys. If you can see the 13th Amendment and how it worked with the 14th Amendment, and why was the 13th Amendment necessary? Why was the 14th Amendment necessary? And why was the 15th Amendment to the Constitution necessary? And why were they all passed within a 12-year window? And why has there not been another constitutional amendment passed that specifically addresses the issues that Africans in America face? Well, because once the political system got rigged with the Compromise of 1877, which goes back to the election that I was talking about, Rutherford B. Hayes against Samuel James Tilden, the Democrat, and Tilden had won both the popular and the electoral vote. But the Republicans were ready to cry foul and take it to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court was going to definitely say, you in the South you all have cheated. Now that's how it works when birds of a feather have an argument with each other. So they go to the Supreme Court, and those birds of that feather argue their point. Well, the Democrats knew they would have lost. So they had a secret meeting, y'all, which somewhere somebody documented something. I would love to find out what went on in that secret meeting called the Compromise of 1877. In that secret meeting called the Compromise of 1877, um, Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel James Tilden decided that the Republicans would win the election. Yeah, they decided that the Republican Party would win the election, and they gave the Republican Party the presidency. And Rutherford B. Hayes took office with one understanding. Forgive me, guys, for moving my fingers around here. They took office with one understanding, and that one understanding was that you would always have two parties running for office: one, the Republican Party, and two, the Democrat Party. That was it. That would be it. Um, so you got just the Republicans and just the Democrats running for office. And because of that, hold on one second, guys. Let me make sure. You know what? I need to go back and share this video. I think I'm forgive me if I'm wrong here, but I tell you what, if I've messed this thing up and somehow have not shared it over to YouTube, what I am going to do is to come back, and what I am going to do is I'll come back and share the video over, and you guys will be able to see it. But I apologize for it not being live on Facebook at this moment. But if you're watching and don't mind, leave a comment. Put your first name and where you are. I mean, put whether you're watching it live or on replay, and then what city you're watching from. And if you want to connect with us, go to the Get Ready for Greatness Facebook page and our December Business Alliance Facebook page. Like those pages. Send me an email at info@richardcuff.com. I'll gladly get that information to you. But now that we lay that foundation, and you can see that there was a compromise in 1877, the Republican Party and the Democrat Party met, and the Republicans came out as the president. But what did the Democrats get? The Democrats got a guarantee from Rutherford B. Hayes that once he was in office, the first thing he would do is cancel out all the things that Lincoln put into place. The Freedmen's Bureau, got rid of that. Remove the troops from the South, gone. Stop prosecuting white extremists for how they treated Black people, done. Opened the door for nearly 60 years of just unrelenting lynchings. So even though that period lasted for about 100 years, from 1865 to 1965, the bulk of the lynchings took place between maybe 1890 and 1950. You know, during that 60-year period, man, there was strange fruit hanging from the trees, because the Supreme Court took their hands off the wheel and said, the one thing we will never do is tell this white body will never tell another white person how to treat a Black person. And that changed in 1965. So in essence, our democracy is only about 60 years old, 55, 60 years old, or so. Because you can probably start, and I'm not necessarily saying, 50 years or 52 years now, with the Civil Rights Act that was actually signed by Lyndon Johnson. But the process started, back in 1954, 55, when Thurgood Marshall argued Board v. Education, and Brown v. Board of Education, and won. And so on the federal level, all the desegregations, the segregation stuff had to be gotten rid of. But it was kind of interesting how it was done. It was saying that although we can't force a private white business to accept the fact that a Black person has the right to walk into a store, and you have to let them in the front door, and you have to let them sit, and you got to give them a bowl of grits with no spit in it, that kind of stuff. That's not what the federal government said. What the federal government said is that Black person who is federally protected has a federal note, that Federal Reserve note that says this note must be accepted. That if that Black person walks into your business with this federal note, you can treat them like a Negro if you want to, but you better treat that dollar like it's gold. And if you do not treat the bearer of that dollar like a citizen, then you do not have the right to collect any dollar from any citizen. And when it was argued that way, and the logic was presented that way, them jokers came off of that. So technically, we haven't had a true democracy in this nation where all the people came in and all the votes were counted. We didn't get that until 1965. So in essence, our nation is not really that old. We're a very, very, very young nation. And right now, we're basically toddlers with the right to bear arms. And you see what happens when you give a child a gun. I was thinking about John. It made me think about John Avanzini, when pastor that I followed for a minute, with Creflo Dollar and I can't remember the other guy's name, but the Marcus Bishop, John Avanzini, Creflo Dollar, Kenneth Copeland. That's the fourth guy. Those four were like the Rat Pack of the gospel movement. And John Avanzini was talking about the story of David, and when he first faced Goliath, and all the men ran, and David included, and David was like, "Oh my God, who is that?" And they explained to him that was Goliath, and this dude has been intimidating us for a minute. But the king has said, whoever defeats Goliath, the king is going to give them, a great amount of wealth. They won't have to pay any taxes, and you'll get the king's daughter to marry. And John Avanzini said, the one thing you don't want to do is offer a teenager a grown woman. Yeah, so that's when you're 16, 17, 18 years old, your motivation changes. But what happens when you're 5 or 6 years old and a gun is placed in your hand? You think it's a toy. And chances are you're going to either kill yourself or kill somebody else, because you don't really understand what you have in your hand. And that's what we're experiencing right now, is that some of the people in our society do not understand what they have in their hands. So let's break this thing down. Guys, I'm going to wrap up here. I've been talking for a minute, but that's really what the morning report is about. I wanted to just lay that foundation. And as we talk about, and you're going to see that I'll continue to hopefully just break things down and get you to understand the constitutional backdrop to everything, and why we're able to have a unique conversation in this country that other people would not be able to have. You don't have an attempted coup, an insurrection, an attempted takeover of a nation, an entire nation's system, and the person who did it still is able to walk around free. You only have that in a democracy like what we have here in the United States. Anybody else would have had, I know this, if it was me and I was in a country where I was the leader and I'm about to come into office, and that person was trying to kill me and stop me from being elected and trying to destroy everything before I get in, my first act of business would be like the guillotine, like streaming live for Richard's Facebook and his Twitter account. Watch the beheading of the dude who tried to destroy everything. That's why I'm not president, y'all. And I'm not in a country where that would be my response. I'm in a country where we've got laws and we've got processes. And I am a firm believer in the process. So yes, I will protest and I will get angry enough to burn it down, but I will ultimately put all of that aside to allow the democratic process to work. And if the democratic process then shows that it doesn't work, yet again, there he was innocent. Yet again, no charges were brought. Yet again, in spite of the video showing him, calling him the N-word and shooting him in the forehead and saying, "I'm glad I did it. Now what, bitches?" And he still kept his pension and never went to jail. In spite of all of that, I still believe in this democracy. A quote from my favorite movie, and I say one of my favorite movies because I'm old enough now to have other favorites, but you can tell this was from my days as a kid, is The Wizard of Oz. When the wizard, after being called out and discovered and being it being discovered that he was just a man behind a curtain pulling levers, as all of our political leaders are. They're just humans. They're just normal people, got caught up in being worshipped by a group of people. But when it was discovered and it was revealed who he was really just a nice old guy who really liked the fact that everybody thought he was the Wizard of Oz. But when he gave the Tin Man that heart, he put the heart around his neck, and there's a line that he put this like a pendant around his neck, and he said, "Hearts will never be practical until they can be made unbreakable." And then the Tin Man said, "Yeah, but I want one anyway." That's the way I feel about our democracy. It will never be perfect until we get the right people in office. It will never be perfect until a man of God is there pointing us toward the God of men. And but that's not going to happen. What we get is these fake politicians, these fake religious leaders. We get fake, fake, fake. And it's not until we understand that it's going to take real leadership, and meaning leadership that's coming from our hearts and going out into the universe. And God is responding to that by sending us the right people and elevating the right people. Until that day happens, we're going to get something that's impractical. It will never be, hearts will never be practical until they can be made unbreakable. And so a democracy will never be practical until it can be made unbreakable. But no democracy is unbreakable because the people are the only thing that's holding it together. So let me just do this real quick. The generational wealth, um, political alliances, and group economics, that's the focus here. So as we focus on those things, um, I want you to recognize that the big picture is always group economics. That's on the institutional and governmental level. The political alliances are local, and the generational wealth is personal. So I want you to focus on those three things. I'll tell you this, I want you to pay attention to what on the group economics level, look at what the Democrat Party is doing and how the Democrat Party is right now playing heavily toward Hispanics. And that's because all the demographics tell us that Hispanics will be a large portion of the society. And already they've made four big moves the Democrats have made, even though in the backdrop, the only reason why the Democrats are in power is because of the overwhelming support of the Black vote. The Black voters showed up and gave Joe Biden the primary. He did that when he got to the North Carolina. He won the primaries because of the Black vote. He won the presidency because of the Black vote in these cities that they sat out. We sat out during the 2016 election. In some cities, states, 250,000 Black people did not vote, but Trump won that state by 17,000 votes. There would be no Donald Trump if Black folk had showed up in 2016. So why is the Democrat Party not playing to the Black vote right now that gave them the win? Why? Because Black people are fickle. One moment we show up to vote, the next moment we sitting back smoking a blunt. That's, I'm just saying the way it is. And can you blame them for that? So what did they do? The first move that they made was Manny Diaz became, and former mayor of Miami, became the president of the Democrat Party here in in Florida. Why not Al Brown, the former mayor of Jacksonville, Duval County, because it's a consolidated city? Why not Al Brown? Al Brown was like really pumping up how connected he was to Obama. He's really connected to Clinton. He's connected to the Democrat Party. So why did not the Florida Democrat Party put black man Al Brown in charge? Well, they did that because, and you know what? Let me see here. I think, yeah, I am. I'm just not. You know what? I need to get over this. Well, anyway, let me finish this because this is really cool. They didn't choose Al Brown because Al Brown. They chose Manny Diaz when they should have chosen Al Brown. Why? Because the Democrats won in Duval County, but they lost in Dade County. Why? Because all the Cubans voted for Trump. So what does the Democrat Party do? They go down there trying to win the Cubans. Why? Because they say we already got the black folk. We don't need to be trying to spend any money trying to win something we know we already got, and we know that we're not going to lose them. And they are fickle. They may not show up the next time around, but these Hispanics show up all the time. The second thing that they did was they announced that the first executive order among the first group of executive orders that Biden is going to do is DACA, is going to give a path to citizenship to 11 million Hispanics. Why is that a priority? And why is not social justice or doing some sort of a national executive order that says all police departments must wear body cameras, and whenever there's a shooting, the police officer by federal mandate now must be terminated immediately. No more allowing him to keep his job. You could have done a simple executive order like that. Why has Biden not done that? Something addressing a specific issue of the black community. What they're talking about is things like baby bonds. You know, all poor babies get bonds, or eliminating credit by getting rid of eliminating debt, getting rid of student loans. But that applies to everybody with student loans. Tell me something that Biden is doing specifically because black people demand that it's done specifically for them. The one thing that we know we need specifically is some sort of federal help to stop these cops from popping us like flies and walking away like they just had a healthy meal at a restaurant. That's what he could have done. But I say strike two, the Democrats. Manny Diaz, Cuban in Dade County. Number two, the selection of the immigrants and undocumented workers, undocumented immigrants getting a path to citizenship. That was the second thing. The third thing, Kamala Harris resigns from her seat, and the very person that is taking her place is not another black woman to keep it as senator, but the very first Hispanic. So three things for the Hispanics. And remember, Biden is not even in office yet. And then the fourth thing is Martin Luther King Day. Does Kamala Harris go to Atlanta on Martin Luther King Day to talk to people in Atlanta, the place that gave them the Senate, that gave Kamala Harris the ability to walk away from the Senate and replace a Hispanic? Does she go to Atlanta? No. She bypasses Atlanta and flies all the way down to Miami for MLK Day. Why? Because of the Hispanic vote. So guys, that's really what I want to talk about. I'm going to talk about that for the rest of this week, and we'll deal with the rest of it. Normally, I'm going to say this. I don't, and for my broadcasters that are watching and you're thinking about doing a show, one of the things that I say often is never apologize for a technical difficulty after the fact, because chances are nobody knew it. But technically, because I couldn't see it, my internet and all this other stuff in the building is something is whack with it. But so I'm doing this from my phone. And so when clicking my phone back and forth, I really can't tell if I had gone over to live. And I see that I originally went to live to share it the over to the Facebook page. And as a result, it didn't share live. So what I'm going to do now is go back and share it, and you guys will see it on my Facebook page, but you'll be seeing a rebroadcast. But the beautiful thing about it is it's there, and the video is now on my on YouTube at getreadyforgreatness.com. Well, go to YouTube and then just search getreadyforgreatness.com, and you'll see the Richard Cuff a morning report. And my day is set, guys. I'm looking forward to what's to come. So till next time, and that next time will be tomorrow.